Hi there and welcome to Studio SN. My name is Sara Naumann and today I'm so excited to share with you my latest stamps and stencils in the Eclectica line from PaperArtsy. This winter I've designed 6 new products for PaperArtsy in their Eclectica range. We have 3 new stamp sets and 3 new stencils. Now they're all designed to be used individually and together. So whichever way you like to do, you can combine any of these elements together and they will work beautifully. So today I wanted to show each one of the new designs, and I also wanted to share with you a little bit of behind the scenes, some of the elements that I've used in putting together each of the stamp and stencil sets. And then finally I'm going to share with you a couple of project ideas for each of the designs, just to show you how I've used the stamps and stencils in my artwork and hopefully give you a little bit of inspiration for yours. Let's start with our first stamp set, which is ESN 23. As you can see here, we've got a real heart theme going on, perfect for Valentine's Day or really just about any time of year. Besides the 3 large collages, you've also got a little snippet of sheet music down here and also some sentiments that you can use for the inside or for the outside of your card. Now, one thing I wanted to share with you, just in terms of the creation of these collage sets, when I'm putting these together, this is what the sheet will look like just as I send it to Leandra over at PaperArtsy. So you can see it looks pretty old school. I don't do very much on the computer when I'm designing these, so all of these have been hand drawn and hand cut. You can see here that I'm using my good old-fashioned glue stick to glue these elements down on here and to cut them from old books or typing things up and finding fun fonts and quotes and things like that. So then I snip everything apart and then paste it all back together again. Some of these elements are cut from old books, and some of them have come from some letters and old postmarks. In fact, I go to a lot of antique stores and old bookstores, and I'm always picking up old letters, old postcards. I just think the postmarks on here are so beautiful and the handwriting is amazing. And you look at some of these really beautiful handwritten letters. And I just love the idea that we can admire them and we can also preserve them and use them in our own artwork as well. So they get a little bit of a new life. So what I do is I essentially scan all of these items and then play with the sizing and the composition, start putting some things together in collages that I think will work for you, as well as have elements that you can cut apart and collage yourself. So in this case, for this card, I'm going to show you, actually I'll show you 2 projects from this one here. So here's a card and here's an ATC. And you can see on this one, the constant heart. I love this sentiment on here. So it says constant on here and then heart down below. I found that in an old book and I just thought it was such a lovely way of expressing a loyal or a steadfast heart, is to say a constant heart. So I cut those elements out and then glued them down. Now what you can do here is stamp it 2 times, as I've done. So again, here's the original design, and then here I've stamped it onto a little swish of London bus, and then stamped it again onto white cardstock. Now this one has been double embossed with clear embossing powder, so it has a bit of a shine to it, and it's almost like an enamel on there. For the background here, I've just used a little bit of gold foil sheets. You'll see that throughout my projects today. And for this, I just take a glue stick and scuffle it around there, put down that gold foiling, burnish it really well, let it dry, and then let the glue dry, and then pull off the foil, and you get some really cool kind of scuffy effects. So that's one card, and then here's an ATC size, and you can see I've taken that for you. I've just put it onto a bit of painted mermaid cardstock. And then I've got another swish of London bus back here, and then the stamp Brave one that we'll see in an upcoming stamp set. And I've also got some stenciling going on here, and I'll show you the stencil in a little bit. So these are 2 ideas that you can use with ESN 23. Now let's take a look at ESN 24. Now this one also has some love elements on here. And you've also got some collage pieces, some big ones. So you've got a nice big one here that can go horizontally, and then you've also got a square element down here. Now what I like about these 2 is that they can sort of go any direction you want them to, because they're pretty abstract. You're also getting some really fun sentiments on here. Proud of you, brave one. That's the one that we had on that ATC. Congratulations and congrats. So again, I wanted to show you a little bit of the process of putting this together. So for this design here, I took a photograph of a leaf, and I take a lot of photos of leaves and feathers that I find on the ground. So this was, this was a feather. I photographed it and then printed it off in black and white, and then cut it apart and then played with the sizing. So this is actually the same feather, just in 2 different sizes, and I like to have those kind of tucked behind there. It's nice to have something that has a rounded shape when you've got a lot of linear elements. So in this one, you can do a couple of different designs. So here are 2 that I wanted to show you. Here are the feathers, and I've cut these out and layered them on top. Here's that constant heart that we saw from the last stamp set, and this has been layered up on top of this design. So the stamps and the stencils are designed to all interchange pretty easily. So I've got this one, and then I've also got this card here too. Scoot this aside. And this one just features, again, this is some more gold foiling, but here is our stamp element that's been cut apart. I've got the congratulations on here, and I've also got some stenciling going on here as well. We'll take a look at that stencil in just a bit. If you're wondering about the background, this is literally just blobs of slate paint, and they've been pressed down onto the cardstock. After that dried, I added a little bit of gold foiling on there. So those are 2 examples of what you can do with some of these elements and the ESN 24 stamp set. So now I'll bring in ESN 25 and we can take a look at this. So again, you've got some nice collage elements. You've got large, medium, and then a small one down here. Now you've also got some sentiments on here, including this one from Virginia Woolf, which I think is my favorite, and it says, "I am never not thinking of you." And I think despite the double negative of this, we're always taught not to use that in English class, but I think it makes such a beautiful statement and so different than, for example, "I'm always thinking of you." I am never not thinking of you. I think that's beautiful. And it goes really nicely with lots of different designs. So again, here you'll see that I've got some leaves on here. Now, as I mentioned, I like to pick up leaves as I'm walking around. And here's one that I found on the ground, took it home, flattened it, and then you'll find it incorporated here into the design. So here's our original leaf, and here it is in a couple of different sizes here too. We're also going to find this leaf that you see on here used in a couple of different places too. So again, they're all designed to coordinate together. So now a couple of examples of what you can do with this design. So here I've got "My heart is and always will be yours." That's from Jane Austen, used right here. I've also got some of the postcard on here. Now this that you're seeing where it says postcard, this is actually from one of my old-fashioned letters. So you can see where it says postcards. These are all from Germany. I found these in an old bookstore. So you'll see it here, you'll see it here, and you'll also see it here. So again, you've got some elements that you can do with your own collaging as well. This postmark that you see with the round and then the stamp, it goes right here, only it's on its side. So once you start seeing these elements, you can start finding them just about anywhere. Now the background that I have on here is a bit of stenciling too. We're going to take a look at that stencil in just a second, but you can see how everything is flowing together really easily. I used some grunge paste on there as well. So that's one project. Here's another one. Now this is using this large element here, and I used a stamp positioner for this one. So I stamped it first with black onto a little bit of stone painted background. This is a bit of slate that's been spattered on as well. So I stamped it in black, left the stamp and the cardstock in my stamp positioner, cleaned the stamp, inked it up with some clear embossing powder, or clear embossing ink, and then stamped it again directly on top. And that gives me the ability to do some embossing on just those leaves, and it makes sure that I get perfect positioning on there. Then the background is a bit of Baltic blue painted cardstock with some mermaid edging, and then I've added some gold foiling on there with my glue stick. So these are some project ideas that you can use with ESN 25. Let's take a look now at our stencils, and we're starting off with PS090. And you've got a couple of different designs on this stencil. So you've got two really cool backgrounds here, some stripes, and then this really fun tile effect that I'm going to talk about in a second. You also have two bird motifs, and of course you probably noticed the birds and the feathers going around in the stamp sets. So this is where things can start to coordinate. Now I wanted to talk first about this bird motif that you see up here at the top. This is actually taken from a photo. And this is the photo turned into black and white. I was waiting for the U-Bahn at the U-Bahn station, waiting for the train to come, and I looked out over the platform over the street and I noticed this really beautiful scene here. It was a really gray and misty morning, and I just thought this looked so beautiful with all of these birds on this this lamp post or light post. So here's the traffic light on here and all of these birds in the morning just all lined up on there. So I took the photo and then manipulated it a little bit so that we ended up with this motif here. We did a little bit of lines going across here to give some more detail on there. But then what you can do is create something like this. So here you can see I've stenciled this with slate paint and I stippled it on, and you do have to be pretty careful that you're not flooding the stencil because there is some detail work in there. But I think it turned out really, really nicely. And of course here you have I Am Never Not Thinking of You, our stamp sentiment from one of the earlier stamp sets. Now as for our other elements here, so you've got another bird, you've got this background here which was also used for the ATC. So you'll notice that I've got it going vertically. You can also do it horizontally, however you want it to go. This area here is probably one of the most versatile and useful patterns that I've ever created. And this is actually from an old tile floor in an old building here in Hamburg. And it's a black and white tile, so the black areas you can see here would be the black tiles and then interspersed with white. Now we had to do a little bit of cutting and pasting with this, and I'll show you why. So here's a little snippet of that floor just from the black and white photo that I took. And you'll notice on here that there are some areas that are kind of chipped out. So the floor was really chipped and pretty worn. It's from, you know, the early 1900s, and it's been walked on for all of those years. So lots of scuff marks. Now the only thing with the stencil is that you need to have all of the parts sort of hooked together, otherwise it just falls, the elements fall out. So the areas here that you see where there's just a white patch, that can't be because there's nothing to sort of hook it together. So I did have to do some literal cutting and pasting, used a lot of whiteout to join things together, but you still get, I think, the overall effect of this really cool scuffly floor here in a building, old building in Hamburg. Now what you can also do here is put white glue or like a PVA glue through the stencil, as you can see on here. Remove the stencil, go clean it off straight away, and then put some foil down on there, and then you'll get a really neat checkerboard gold foiling effect. And of course you can see here one of our stamps from the stamp set, and then a little with love down here. So this is a PS090. Let's take a look at PS091. Now here again you can see lots of leaves, lots of other little elements that you can use together. And the leaves are, again, from some elements that I've found. So you'll notice that this leaf is almost exactly the same, maybe a little bit smaller. And then I've just tilted them back and forth. You can also kind of scan them in and do the reverse, so flipping them over. You can also enlarge them. So I've enlarged the leaf here, so I've got a nice great big one, and then I've got these series of smaller elements here too. You have a little bit of scuffling, which is also repeated in one of the stamp sets, and then also this motif down here. And then this one was also used with some grunge paste and some glitter on this card project, so you can see that here. The Thinking of You, this one I really like using with a fine pen. It seems to work really well. So for card projects, you can see here what I've done is just stamped this or stenciled this twice and cut out one of those great big leaves and just overlapped it on there. Here you can see some feathers from the stamp set and a little postmark, and again the brave one, and then our miracles sentiment. So that's with the large leaf and the bird. And here I've stenciled that row of leaves. I've stenciled it with mermaid and then added some green, light green embossing powder in there, and then the Proud of You stamp on there. All of the backgrounds are painted cardstock that have just been kind of cut and collaged together. So I'm using stone, London bus, and some Baltic blue back in here. So this is with PS091. Now I'm gonna bring in our final stencil, and this is PS092. And this is, again, that same tile floor, only it's bigger and more all over. So you can see you've got the smaller design here, and then the larger, the floor itself, again, with a lot of whiteout being used on our altered version of this. But this is just so useful. I love it because, of course, you can use it as an entire background, as I've done on here. And this, you can see we've got the heart, that For You heart, sent with love. Again, some more gold foiling. I've got some mermaid painted on here. And this was stenciled with slate paint. And again, just using a stipple brush or a stippling motif. That will help to prevent it from flooding. But even if it does flood, I think it still looks pretty cool. So this is one way to use it. Then here's another way to use it. And you can see I've done it on the background here. It's mixed in with a little bit of spattered London bus in the background. What I've done to create this, rather than stippling my paint through the design, I've brayered mermaid paint all over the stencil, spritzed it lightly with water, and then put my cardstock on top and pressed it down. And that gives me the reverse of the stencil design. So it's another way to get kind of a watercolor effect without flooding and seeping through your stencil. So that's another technique you can use with it. Of course, I've got my stamping on here. I've got some elements that are popped up, and again, a little bit of gold showing through. So this is using PS092. So I hope you've enjoyed seeing the newest stamps and stencils from PaperArtsy, as well as a little bit of the background into creating these, and some ideas that you can use the stamps and stencils for in your own artwork. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really do encourage you to pop on over to the PaperArtsy website. They have a blog up with lots of projects and videos. They are over at paperartsy.co.uk. When you're done there, please stop on over at my place, which is saranaumann.com. Thanks so much, and I will see you again next time.